Could the true cost of the conflict in Ukraine be far greater than we've been led to believe? Today we're delving into the startling claims made by Douglas Macgregor, who suggests the human toll of events unfolding in Eastern Europe may be far more devastating than official reports suggest. Good day, Douglas. You've suggested that nearly 400,000 individuals have been wounded in Ukraine, with many unable to return to military service due to severe injuries. Can you elaborate on this? Macgregor: intriguing. There are also some reports that allege you've stated 257,000 Ukrainians have perished, including soldiers and civilians. This figure remains unverified, but it underscores the immense human cost of the conflict. How do you respond to this? Macgregor: you've asserted that the CIA has a history of misleading the public, particularly regarding events in Russia and Ukraine. What makes you question the credibility of such sources? Macgregor: you've expressed concern for Ukraine's future, predicting its imminent collapse under Russian pressure. Can you explain why you believe this is inevitable? Macgregor: you've criticized conditions for negotiations, arguing that demanding Russian withdrawal from Ukraine and Crimea is unrealistic. What do you believe is a more realistic approach? Macgregor: Douglas, you've also dismissed notions of a weakened Russia, citing positive economic indicators and geopolitical implications of Russia's stability. Could you elaborate on the consequences of destabilizing Russia, particularly in Eastern Siberia and Central Asia? Macgregor: finally, you've discussed Nassim Taleb's views on finance and highlighted the disconnect between policymakers in Washington, D.C. and Europe. How do you believe this disconnect impacts the war in Ukraine? Macgregor: to summarize, Macgregor's views present a stark picture of the conflict in Ukraine. He highlights the immense human toll, questions the credibility of mainstream sources, and predicts Ukraine's imminent collapse under Russian pressure. Furthermore, he criticizes the current conditions for negotiations and warns against the consequences of destabilizing Russia. His analysis suggests a need for a rethink of current strategies, underscoring the gravity of the situation in Ukraine and the potential implications for Russia, and indeed, the rest of the world. Does the growing military power of Russia echo the drumbeats of a bygone era? Welcome to our deep dive into this compelling question. In the world's grand chessboard, nations often draw from the lessons of their past. The Russia of today is no different. Its military maneuverings are reminiscent of past campaigns, a strategic caution shaped by its rich history. In the relatively stable post-Cold War era, the United States was seen as the world's dominant force. Aggressive actions against those who opposed it were justified. Yet this view is now outdated, disconnected from the reality of today's geopolitical complexities. Take, for instance, the current military strategy in Ukraine. It's akin to past campaigns in Iraq, the Balkans, and even World War II, where critical infrastructure was systematically targeted to weaken adversaries. This approach, some argue, is necessary to prepare Ukraine for impending offenses and denies opponents the comfort of normalcy before a significant ground assault. The ongoing conflict suggests a shift in Moscow's objectives, from seeking negotiation to strategic defense and economy of force. With a likely major offensive looming in the coming weeks, the precision of modern military capabilities is emphasized. It's not about reckless actions, but strategic precision. Interestingly, the power stations and distribution networks were targeted within these conflict areas, but the intention wasn't total destruction. If they wanted to level everything, they could have done so swiftly. The nuclear power plant of significant concern is located to the south near Zaporizhia, which the Russians are safeguarding. Ukrainian attempts to target this plant aim to provoke a nuclear crisis, a scenario they believe would benefit them. The focus isn't solely on preventing Ukrainians from utilizing these facilities, but also on protecting them from Ukrainian attacks. However, connectivity between these plants in Ukraine has been severed, leading to widespread disruptions in daily life affecting transportation, water supply, agriculture, and livestock. The cascading effects have severely impacted the Ukrainian economy, with output nearly non-existent. In terms of military strategy, experts note the significance of weather. It's a factor that can turn the tide of a conflict, a lesson learned from past campaigns. In summary, Russia's growing military power and strategic caution are shaped by past military campaigns, with an emphasis on precision and economy of force. Its actions in Ukraine reflect a shift in objectives and the importance of protecting critical infrastructure. The outcome of this conflict could have far-reaching implications for the geopolitical landscape. Remember, history often repeats itself, but the future is never set in stone. The chessboard is vast, the players are many, and the game is far from over.
Have you ever pondered the terrain in Ukraine and its role in the region's productivity? The fertile black earth topsoil, with its depth ranging from 4 to 15 feet, is a pulchritudinous marvel. It's the lifeblood of the region's productivity, the backbone of its agriculture. However, it's not just a blessing, but also a challenge. When the temperature drops below freezing and the earth unfreezes, the terrain can become a formidable foe. Consider this scenario. Should an offensive occur between the 10th and 19th of December, the terrain could turn into a battleground. An estimated 540,000 Russian troops are deployed, supported by a range of armored vehicles, artillery, missiles, drones, and aircraft equipped with precision munitions. However, amidst these tensions, there's an ongoing effort to provide more equipment to the Ukrainians. Despite the grim reports of devastating casualties, particularly in recent months, claims of heavy Russian casualties are dismissed, emphasizing the significant disparity in losses between Russian and Ukrainian forces. This disparity, however, doesn't hinder the former's capabilities. The Ukrainian military is described as severely depleted, with shortages in ammunition, spare parts, and trained personnel. The influx of untrained reservists into defensive positions reflects the dire situation. In advising policymakers, a truthful assessment of the Russian forces' concentration and capabilities is suggested, alongside the modest capabilities of the Ukrainian military. Even prominent figures like Klitschko are urging citizens to seek shelter elsewhere due to anticipated shortages of essential resources. The potential influx of millions of refugees into neighboring countries is foreseen as a looming humanitarian crisis. Privately, policymakers acknowledge the flawed approach but lack a viable alternative plan. So, what is the way forward? Doubling down on current strategies driven by ideological fervor but lacking a realistic path to success. The situation in Ukraine is likened to the last days of Pompeii, where blame is sought amidst inevitable catastrophe. Most of the Russian combat forces have withdrawn for rest and refit, with the current fighting in Donetsk led by separatist forces supported by mercenaries and artillery. A massive offensive led by the refreshed Russian army is anticipated, focused on consolidating control over strategic Ukrainian territories. Ukraine's independence is acceptable to Putin as long as it doesn't become a tool for Western interests or a threat to Russia. While he privately expresses indifference towards Ukraine's European Union membership, his primary concern lies with the possibility of NATO's involvement, particularly with a well-equipped Ukrainian military funded by the West. This prospect worries European powers like Berlin and Rome, as perpetual conflict with Russia could ensue. In conclusion, Ukraine's terrain plays a vital role in the region's productivity, but it also poses challenges. The ongoing military tensions, the disparity in forces, the looming humanitarian crisis, and the geopolitical implications all paint a complex picture. This is a situation that calls for strategic foresight, realistic planning, and a careful balance of power. The stakes are high, and the world is watching.
Could the crisis situation we face today be the result of presidential preferences influencing intelligence reports? It's a provocative question, but one that demands our attention and consideration. In the current situation, the world is teetering on the brink of significant geopolitical shifts. Democracies are regaining strength, while autocracies face internal challenges. Yet, the influence of presidential preferences on intelligence reports can distort the truth, leading to decisions driven by a misplaced sense of invulnerability and power. Such distortions can inflame situations, as seen in the hawkish rhetoric towards Russia, and a failure to realistically assess national capabilities and challenges. This issue goes beyond international politics and spills into the military domain. Recent changes in leadership and policies emphasize diversity over performance, a move that critics argue undermines morale and effectiveness. The appointment of unconventional commanders, changing recruitment standards, and a shift in values can all be seen as an attempt to reshape the armed forces to align with a particular ideology. Former Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, for instance, has drawn criticism for his apparent disdain for the military institution and the American people. The passive acceptance of destructive directives by senior officers has been noted, leading to a decline in the authority of the chain of command and a disconnect between the military's core mission and recent trends in recruitment videos. Furthermore, financial assistance to countries like Ukraine, ostensibly for defense capabilities, often remains within the United States, funneled to defense contractors. This process, some argue, serves interests beyond simply supporting Ukraine, including political considerations and economic incentives for constituents and industries. The problems arising from this situation are manifold. Misplaced presidential preferences can lead to untruthful decision-making, escalating international tensions. The reshaping of the armed forces and the undermining of traditional military values can have long-term consequences on morale and effectiveness. And the manipulation of financial assistance for geopolitical gain can further complicate international relations. The implications of these issues are far-reaching. A distorted view of international relations can lead to miscalculations and missteps, potentially sparking conflicts. The transformation of the military could result in a force ill-prepared for the challenges it faces. And the misuse of financial aid could erode trust between nations, making cooperative solutions to global problems more difficult to achieve. In conclusion, the influence of presidential preferences on intelligence reports, the reshaping of the armed forces, and the manipulation of financial assistance all contribute to the current crisis situation. Understanding these issues is crucial to navigating the complex geopolitical landscape of today. It is a reminder that truthfulness in decision-making, respect for institutional values, and transparency in financial assistance are essential for maintaining stability and peace.